Hey guys, Scott here. Today I wanted to go over my most killer-sided opinion that I currently have. I definitely lean a bit more towards Survivor, probably like 60-40 in terms of opinions, despite the fact I'm probably like 80% playing Killer and 20% playing Survivor. I definitely have slightly more Survivor-sided opinions most of the time. Really what happens is my opinions shift depending on the current patch. For example, like when Circle of Healing was a thing, I was very much on pure Killer side. And then, vice versa would happen whenever something very killer side would happen, like, Rune Undying Tinkerer or Call of Brine Eruption Overcharge. Then I was way more on the Survivor side. So I do typically bend with whatever patch and meta that we currently have and kind of fight for whatever the underdog is at that current moment. But overall, I would say on average, I lean slightly more Survivor sided. And that's solely due to the fact that I win like 95% of my games as Killer. And I sure as shit don't win that much as Survivor. Even when playing with friends, I don't even escape half my matches. So I am losing way more on Survivor and I'm winning way more on Killer. So it would be very silly for me to go, well, you know what? I think Killer needs to be even stronger. It just doesn't make any sense for me personally. And that's it. It's really as simple as that. That's all the thought that goes into it. I find it much easier to win as Killer than I find it easier to win as Survivor. Therefore, my opinions lean slightly more on the Survivor side. But I do have a Killer opinion that I would like to talk about, because every time I do like an experiment about like tunneling or slugging or anything like that, I always see this same point that I want to address. And the point that these people bring up is, well, yes, I understand tunneling and slugging is not that big of a deal if I bring the perks to deal with that perk or to deal with that playstyle. Sure, if I have Unbreakable and I get slugged, not a big deal. If I get tunneled and I have a DS, not a big deal. And that's all well and good. But people don't want to dedicate their builds to something that the killer might do just so they can have a bearable experience in the game, which I completely understand. But that main argument, I have to bring up the counterpoint, and this is where it becomes killer-sided. That whole thing where you're kind of forced to bring perks that you don't really want to have to bring, you don't get to experiment with anything else as Survivor, yeah, that sucks, but that is literally what killers have been doing since the game came out. I would love to just pick Pig and slap on fucking All Shaking Thunder and Coup and like Predator and like Beast of Prey and just some dumb shit like that and be like, oh, I'm gonna have a good time. No, you're gonna get your ass beat is what's gonna happen. The game is really balanced around you running some form of slowdown in some way, so killers are really kind of limited in the same way that survivors are. A lot of killers feel that they need to camp and tunnel and slug, and so to defend against that, survivors will have to bring stuff, but at the same time, killers feel like the games go way too fast, so they're forced to bring slowdowns. And honestly, both of these things can be very true at the same time. And so I never really get that argument that people make on the Survivor side where I don't want to bring a perk that I don't want to bring. I want to bring my fun build. It's like, yeah, well, so do we. So we want to do that on Killer too, but that's just not how the game works, unfortunately. This game is balanced by perks since basically patch 1. It has always been balanced by perks, and it is lovely. It's a lovely thought to think that we'll be at a point sometime where there's enough base kit quality of life to where we don't need these things anymore, but it's been 8 years and we're not there yet. So I'm just talking about the current form of the game. I always find it hypocritical when survivors would complain about that and offer that as a counterpoint to whatever I'm talking about, in the video or whatever experiment I'm doing, and then not take the killer side into account, which has to do the exact same thing. Now, I talked about this on Twitter a little bit, and I had a couple of good counterpoints. One of them, in fact, the main and really only one I saw, was that survivors have to bring perks that they might not even get a chance to use, whereas the killer, if they bring perks, they will pretty much always get to use them because they know what they're bringing and they sort of control the flow of the match. So not only is this just simply not true, like for example, survivors have perks that they can just simply use whenever they want. Sprint Burst, you will always get value from it without a doubt. But for purposes of talking about camping and tunneling and slugging, if you bring Decisive Strike, for example, and then you don't get tunneled, you've wasted a perk slot. Again, at the same logic, if you bring Spirit, Fury, Enduring as killer and everyone pre-drops pallets, you've wasted 2 perk slots. So the same shit exists on the killer side, but to play devil's advocate, I'll go even more into this. That whole argument is just based on how the killer is going to play because they're in control of the actual match. But that's really that's just sort of how the game works, and we have 16 perks versus 4 perks. Yes, statistically, you shouldn't be able to get as much consistent value when you have 4 times the amount of chances to get value from those perks. So yeah, on average, Killer has a bit more control over the perks they're going to use per match. Again, not all the time. A lot of times they'll have a totem and their shit will be broken in 15 seconds. Like, this shit happens all the time, but you do have to take into account for the fact that there are 4 times as many perks on Survivor. A lot of survivors really sometimes forget they're a part of a team and think they are the main character of the story, and then that's all that really matters. It's just not the case. You have 4 times as many perks on your team, therefore it makes sense that the consistency of use of your perks is going to be slightly less. Because, for example, if every survivor brings 2 anti-tunnel perks and the killer doesn't tunnel a single time, that's still 8 perks versus 4 perks that are getting value. If you look at it that way, it's sort of a no-brainer in terms of, the quantity of value of perks that we actually get. So just look at it that way, and you can see it's really not a fair argument to make. So that is really my most killer-sided opinion. I really don't like when people say, well, I'm forced to bring these perks to deal with something. They should just give us it all that base kit. Sure, in that case, give us fucking Ruin base kit. Give us Pain Resonance base kit. Give us Corrupt base kit. And then we'll talk. They're not going to do that, so stop talking about this stuff too, you know what I mean? Again, I know we're talking about idealistic forms of the game, stuff like that, but until we really move into an area, if ever that were to happen, then I don't think that's a fair counterpoint to killers in that discussion. So that's it. I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that. I feel like every time I say this, it's a very hot take or something, but I do firmly believe that is the case. That's it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.